Good morning, guys. This is our lesson for Sunday, December 20th, 2020. Get your Bibles out and turn to Romans chapter 8. We're going to be in verses 18 through 28 today. Uh, I'll be curious to see how this all goes. So let me know when I get back. But I'm going to start. I'll basically do this like we normally do. I've got some questions for you. I have some comments. We'll read through the scriptures and then we will just kind of throw some stuff out there. So I'll I'll throw out a question. Y'all can discuss it. If you're there at the church building, if you're there as families, however, I'll give you a few seconds between each one. If you need to pause the video between each one to discuss more, that's cool. Whatever. So here we go. Romans chapter 8, guys, verses 18 through 20. But let's start with some questions here. So if someone said to you, there can't be a God because of all the pain and suffering in the world, how would you respond? It's a tough question, I'll be honest. I'll tell you, one of my thoughts with this is if there's no pain and suffering in this world, why would we even need God? We wouldn't want to. We would just be like, oh, we don't need him. So there's that to think about. Second question. Have you ever seen anything good come out of suffering? If so, describe it. I'll be honest, in my life, there's been times where because of suffering, some good things, I've seen good things out of it. One of the first things that always jumps to my mind is with Kinley and her accident originally. I mean, you talk about some suffering. We suffered a lot, but we also saw how many people in the world cared about us. We had cards, we had prayers coming from all over the world, different countries even. It was amazing. And so there was a lot of good. Since then, Sarah's been able to help so many different people, whether helping them get through things with their children being in the hospital, things with dealing with social security, disability, different things like that on that medical and even paperwork side. She's been able to help so many people. So there's a lot of good that's come from that suffering. Last question is, what are some things you can think of that you can only accomplish through pain? Of all the goals you've accomplished, can you think of anything that didn't require some pain? Be honest, if you really think about it, things that we accomplish, not things that we're given, things we accomplish, usually take some pain and suffering. For you guys who are in sports, you've got to work out. You've got to put in that time, that effort. There's a pain that goes into it. You know, for you guys who are musicians, there's a lot of pain that comes when you're having to spend time practicing, whether it's tiredness, it's mental fatigue, just exhaustion. Things that are really worth accomplishing so many times require some sort of suffering, some sort of anguish to get through it. Very rarely can you think of things that are wonderful without any pain. I think about having children. Yeah, I didn't go through a whole lot of pain. Sarah went through a lot of pain, but yet the anxiety of newborn child, the things that go with it, it's like one of the greatest experiences ever, and it is so worth everything you go through to be able to hold that little child in your arms. Well, let me ask you this before we get into our reading. Have you ever had to make some chocolate chip cookies? If you really think about it, it's kind of a shock what goes into chocolate chip cookies. In fact, if you take each ingredient before you put it in and mix it all together, there's only a few of the ingredients that actually taste good. The rest you wouldn't want to even put in your mouth. But you need all of those ingredients for the cookies to come out right. If you only put the good stuff in, you would have this mess when it's done. And so that's a kind of analogy, and Paul's going to talk about pain and suffering in this section of scripture. In the last chapter, we discussed that we have struggles we have to face in our lives. We've talked about how our struggles will end it someday. But Paul gives us a picture of what God is going to do with our struggles. Now, taken by themselves, our suffering don't taste good. In fact, we hate it. We don't see why it's necessary. But much like the ingredients of a chocolate chip cookie, we wonder why God allows them. But those things that we don't like, those things we don't taste, once it's all in there with everything else, becomes this glorious thing. You see, all the suffering we endure, God will bring forth glory from that suffering one day. And sometimes we wonder why God allows us to suffer. So we're going to talk about that. Especially, I hope that you'll think about this a little bit differently. And maybe next time you eat a chocolate chip cookie, you'll think about things differently. So let's go to Romans 8 verses 18 through 28. Here we go. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. For we do not know what to pray for as we ought. But the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And he who searches hearts knows what is in the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good. For those who are called according to his purpose, for those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. So Paul's sitting here and he tells us right off the bat that the sufferings that we're going to see at this present time in this life, compared to what is waiting for us in heaven, is nothing. It's literally compared to heaven. I mean, this life is finite. There will be an ending to, there's a beginning, there's an end to this. In heaven, when we're there as sons, as children of God, there will be no ending. And Paul even tells us that as God created this world, he was in hope that we would have a relationship with him. And this whole world, he talks about how this whole world is in it's groaning together in the pains of childbirth. That means even this world is suffering because it has something greater waiting for it. If you look in Revelation, the last couple of chapters there, it talks about there will be a new heaven and a new earth. And this earth will be so much better than this. That he talks about heaven, what we have to look forward to there. Guys, I know there's a lot of times where we suffer. And when we're sitting there suffering, we're thinking, God, why am I going through this? I've been there. I've done it. There's times where I'm sitting here thinking, God, I've suffered enough sometimes. Why must this continue on? But he's doing it to prepare us. Just like those chocolate chip cookies I talked about. There's things we don't like, but those things that don't taste good in those chocolate chip cookies, when they all come together with the goodness of the chocolate chips themselves, think about it. All that together makes this wonderful thing. Well, all the good that you've gone through, all the bad that you go through, it is all coming together to make you ready for heaven. That first question I asked you about if there can't, or what is it? If somebody said to you, there can't be a God because of all the pain and suffering in the world, how would you answer them? Guys, really and truly, if we had no pain and suffering in this world, we wouldn't see a need for God. But because there is pain and suffering that is so much bigger than us, we need someone bigger than us to help us through it. And that's God. He goes on in verses 24 and 25. He says, "For in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience." If there is no suffering in this world, we wouldn't have hope. We wouldn't need hope. But because there's suffering, because there's pain in this world, it gives us hope for what's heaven. If we lived right now where it was heaven on earth, everything was perfect, there was no sin, there was no pain, there's no death, there's no tears, there's none of that, we wouldn't have an appreciation for what's to come. Let's imagine you take those ingredients for the chocolate chip cookies and you taste each one. In fact, I encourage you to sit there, go home, or if you're at home, get the different items that go into making a cookie, a chocolate chip cookie. You need butter, sugar, brown sugar, vanilla, baking soda, salt, raw egg, flour, and chocolate chips. Now, butter, yeah, that can taste really good. I've known kids over the years that they sit there and take a big hunk of butter and just eat the butter because it's good. Sugar, my grandparents had, when we were growing up, they had this jar sitting on the kitchen table, and it was filled full of sugar cubes. Now, those sugar cubes were meant for their coffee and for their tea. My brother would come in and he would just grab a handful of sugar cubes and sit there and pop sugar cubes. And my grandmother would let him. She's like, it's grandma's house. He can do what he wants. I was always like, I can't eat that much sugar. But he loved it. It was good. Now, try some vanilla, just straight vanilla. Whew, it's strong. I've never even tried baking soda by itself. And I can't even, just thinking about it, gross. A raw egg, I'm sorry, no. I mean, I'm picky about my eggs. They've got to be scrambled in an omelet, something like that. I don't even like hard-boiled eggs. So I can't imagine eating raw eggs. And then sugar, or I mean flour, gross. No, I've gotten flour in my mouth. I'm not that. It's not you know the flour sits out. You wonder why parents don't have to worry about their kids getting into the flour. They might make a mess, but they're not going to eat it. Now the chocolate chips, hey, if a chocolate chip bag of chocolate chips disappears, that's good stuff. But when you see those ingredients sitting down, when you taste those ingredients, some of you are going to be like, I don't want this. Problem thing is though, as you smell, excuse me, as you phone call, I forgot to put the do not disturb on. As you smell those chocolate chip cookies baking in the oven, you walk in, you smell it. Oh, I can't wait. And then you get, I love those like right, maybe a minute or so out of the, oven cookies. I mean, they've cooled down enough that they don't burn your tongue, but they're still the chocolate chip is just gooey, and you're just like, oh, this is like the best thing ever. God has prepared us like that. We have good things in life. We have great things in life, but we have suffering. All that together, especially that suffering, makes us appreciate, makes us hope for heaven so much more. But God knew that we were going to have a tough time getting through this. And we've talked about this on Wednesday nights. We talked about this last Sunday somehow. For the Israelites, when they were first a nation, how the presence of God was that pillar of cloud, that pillar of fire, a burning bush, things like that. His presence was this thing that they could see. And then for the Israelites there, the Jews in the day of Jesus, he was physical there. They could have touched him. God knew that we were going to have suffering, that we would be so far away from being able to have Jesus on this earth. I mean, we're talking 2,000 years later. He knew we needed something more. And so he sent his Spirit for us because he knew we would need help in getting through those tough times. So let's look at verses 26 through 28. I love these verses. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And he who searches hearts knows what is in the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. When you become a Christian, when you put Christ on in baptism, the Spirit of God comes and dwells in you. And this is a powerful thing because the Spirit knows we are weak. The Spirit knows, there's those times where you're really tempted, but you hear that voice back here that says, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I really believe that's God's Spirit saying, no, you don't need that. You're better than that. You don't need it. You're stronger than you think. But not only that, but when we pray, there's so many times when I don't know what to say to God. Especially when I'm in those times of suffering and anguish, and I'm just like, God, I need a way out. I don't know what to do. Help me. Well, the Spirit, he comes between us and God, and he knows what we need, and he tells God, this is what your child needs. This is what he's trying to say. I think back to when, again, with Kinley's accident, when it first happened, and I was so angry at God. I was so upset that my baby girl was hurting, was going through this, and I didn't know what to do. I know that when I was mad and I was saying things and I was just letting it all out, that the Spirit was going between me and God, and in ways that I can't understand. in things that are beyond words, saying he's hurting. He's in pain and he needs our help. What are we going to do for him? Send whatever we need. Send those amazing things that only you, God, can give him. Strengthen him. Help him in ways that he never could imagine. Because God is always working for us. Verse 28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. Guys, when you become a Christian, when you are a child of God, he's everything, even the bad things, are meant to make us better. We oftentimes talk about how, the fire, how God will put us in the fire to strengthen us, to make us stronger. It's something that we don't really understand. But it's like that chocolate chip cookie. Even though we sit there and mix all that stuff together, the good and the not so yummy stuff, it takes fire, it takes heat, it takes anguish to produce a wonderful, great thing. If you just mixed that stuff together and you set it there, it wouldn't be a true chocolate chip cookie. It's only when you put it in the oven and you bake it do you get that wonderful chocolatey goodness. And that's why we have to suffer. That's why we have pain and sorrow and anguish in this world, so that God is preparing us for the future. God is giving us an appreciation of heaven. I mentioned my grandmother earlier. She was a great, great Christian woman. I loved her to death. And she went through a lot of pain and anguish, especially at the end of her life. She always would tell us life was never easy. She walked from Arkansas to Oklahoma barefoot when she was little because her family was moving. She said that was one of the toughest things she's ever faced, she thought. And then she had to face things like World War I. She had to marry a husband and send him off to World War II. She faced a lot of tough times in her life, but she always told me it was always worth it because she knew she always had God on her side. And I remember there at the end, even though she had so much pain going on in her body, she always would say, it'll be over soon and the best is yet to come. Guys, no matter what you're going through, the best is yet to come. So, that's our study for today. I really do encourage you guys, go home. Look through this ingredients that make a chocolate chip cookie. Taste them. See what I'm talking about. And hopefully the next time you taste a chocolate chip cookie, you'll remember that God is preparing you through all the pain and suffering you're going through. He's preparing you for some great things one day. Take care, guys. I will see you next Sunday. Don't forget, this Wednesday night, there will be no D&D. I'm on vacation. Derek's going to be out of town. So no D&D on the 23rd. See you next Sunday. Take care. Hopefully, be good boys and girls, and Santa Claus will bring you lots of presents. So Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. See you guys. Bye.